I was on the track to be a professional rugby league player. Along the way, I picked up some stereotypical traits within that field, if you like. Something within me knew there was more to life than that. And we went on a 1-month yoga retreat to Thailand. I had deep spiritual experience. Men are struggling and men are in pain and men are anxious and panicking and not knowing what to do. And now we've got to provide avenues for them to go down. Self-love is that inward journey into learning to love every single part of ourselves.
A massive thank you to our sponsor NTS, Nuclear Transport Solutions, who are the leading global provider of safe, secure and reliable nuclear transport solutions. We are very grateful for NTS sponsoring this episode of Tackling It Together. So welcome back to the Little Blackbird Tackling It Together podcast, and here we're in Hebden Bridge.
Hebden Bridge.
With Craig White. Craig, how are you doing?
Good, mate. Good to finally meet you.
Well, I said as we got out of the car, I feel like I've met you, but I haven't. It's this little thing where you meet people that you have a lot of respect for, and there's always that nerves of what they're going to be like. But the first half an hour, we've had such a good chat already.
I'm a lot taller than you thought, aren't I?
You are. You're a bloody giant.
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
Yeah, absolute colossal of a man. So we're going to have a cracking conversation. I knew when I asked you the question, where are we going to go with this? And you just said, let's crack on, open book, ask me anything. So I'm approaching this as like I might never see you again. So I'm going to go for it. I'm going to ask you what's on my mind. I feel like I've known you because I think your social media stuff, your LinkedIn stuff in particular, every time I read something, I'm on you with comments and that because I just see a man with an incredible amount of depth, an incredible amount of bravery, but also I'm really interested in what's underneath the hood, understanding a little bit more about you and what makes you tick and why so many people feel connected with you, men in particular. So before we get into it, in terms of your background, 3 decades in rugby, thereabouts, strength and conditioning.
Yeah, 3 decades as a high performance professional, I guess you could say.
And then that kind of got you into 10 years leadership, mentoring, specifically.
Yeah, I've had my own company for about 10 years.
I'm going to ask you a little question just to roll you in here. Go with it. I don't know what response we're going to get. What I've tried to do is to bring a little bit of humour to the pods that we have. So, who would win in an altercation between a polar bear and a gorilla?
I'd say polar bear.
Why?
Because it's used to being resilient in extreme conditions and it knows how to survive. I reckon it'd be a bit tougher. I reckon a gorilla could have a bit of a soft spot. And it would depend where they had the fight as well, wouldn't it?
Go on, tell me more.
Well, I think the polar bear might struggle in the jungle, but the gorilla would be fucked in the Antarctic, wouldn't it?
Aye, tree cover.
You know?
Fucked in the Antarctic. Good, I expect that depth from you. So, I reached out to you on LinkedIn and I'm always intrigued as to why people say yes. I've just told you a little bit about why we did this. I told you on LinkedIn. Why did you say yes? I
get a lot of people contacting me on LinkedIn and emails and stuff like that, and sometimes I just bounce it off, but when I feel like someone genuinely cares and they've got the balls to ask and they tell me why they want a piece of my time, I'll often say yeah, even if it's a young 22-year-old lad that wants to know about my career in rugby. Like I'm meeting a young lad, he's only 24, in Hebden Bridge in a couple of weekends because he keeps pestering me and I like his confidence. So I don't know, I'm just open to people that sound genuine and they want to speak to me for a genuine reason and they've got a genuine mission in life, and I feel like you've got a genuine mission in life.
Would you have done that 20 years ago? The reason I asked that,
maybe
I've been at this at maybe 18 months and I've sent a few messages, not loads, because similar to you, you've got to look beneath a lot of the stuff that you see on there and you've got to really question, is it authentic? And you get a lot of non-responses, but you can tell a lot by what people are putting out there to the world, and then also the indirect messaging, the behind the scenes. No one knows that you and I messaged. And yours seem to really collaborate, is it that word? Collaborate or come together. It just seemed to really match, and I thought there's something here. And already in this first half an hour or 45 minutes that we've had, you can see that there's a lot underneath that surface. And I want to get into that. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey, because obviously, I mean, I watched the Good, the Bad, the Rugby podcast you did, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But it was kind of the last 20 minutes that got me.
Yeah.
I thought the early bit, and no disrespect to your career, but I think it was the final 20 when you started to get into the masculinity stuff.
Yeah.
When you started to really open up about your perspective on things, which I found quite profound, which led me to get in touch. But give the viewers or the listeners a bit of a snapshot into the Craig White of the past and the Craig White of the present and your journey.
Yeah, I won't go into too much detail because I've done so many podcasts, and as you say, the juice comes kind of later on in life, really. I'm from Wigan. I was raised to be a rugby league player. I was on the track to be a professional rugby league player. That's all I knew. I tried my best to become a professional rugby league player. Along the way, I picked up some good traits around confidence and looking after my body and training hard and being committed, but I also picked up some stereotypical traits within that field, if you like. You know, you're not a man if you're not a man if you're in touch with your feminine. You're not a man if you cry. You're not a man if you don't control your anger. All that kind of stuff. So I downloaded all that, but I channeled it towards being a professional rugby league player. It didn't happen. I did get offered a couple of different contracts, but something within me knew there was more to life than that. And I'd already done a little bit of strength and conditioning work at a club called Waterloo, and I was going to Liverpool John Moores University. I'd got some work on the side with a couple of brothers that ran a kind of health and fitness agency. So that became my career, really. And then I finished uni, and it wasn't long after that I became the first ever full-time strength and conditioning coach to work with the Irish rugby team and live in Dublin. Did that for a few years, and then I had a great career full-time in professional rugby for 15 years. Waterloo, Ireland, Bolton Wanderers in the Premiership football, Wasps, British and Irish Lions. I went on 2 tours with the British and Irish Lions. I worked with Wales, I worked with Leicester Tigers. After about 15 years working full-time, I was working for Wales. I was head of performance in Wales, and my wife at the time got me into yoga, and we went on a 1-month yoga retreat to Thailand.
Oh, wow. Really
intensive yoga retreat. It wasn't a spa. It was a full-on yogic retreat. You know, with the traditional teachings and long, arduous practices, and it was the most significant moment of my life. It blew my mind. The technology of yoga, the philosophy, the methodology of yoga, totally blew my mind, and it still does. But the practice was really difficult for me. You know, keeping still, breathing, meditating, trying to shift my attention from the outside on the inside. I couldn't keep still. I couldn't stop itching. I couldn't meditate. And then after about 2 weeks, something shifted. I was able to sit through meditation, and I had deep spiritual experience. I had a deep out-of-body experience. I connected with my heart. I connected with expansion. I connected with the concept of oneness. I felt love that I'd never felt before. But at the same time, because I'd tapped into my subconscious, because I was still and I wasn't distracting myself, the other side came up as well. You know, I was angry as fuck. I was rageful. I was thinking about my dad and why I didn't respect him. And then I got angry towards my mum when I worked a few things out. And then I was really angry towards my brother because I perceived that he bullied me as a kid. And I was letting it out on people, and there was uncomfortable feelings in my body. So at the end of that month, I knew that life would be different when I got home to Wales. So I got on to my job in Wales, and I'm sat at my desk, staff working with me, and life wasn't the same. To cut a long story short, it took me 1.5 years to get out of that job because the mind kept saying, you can't leave, you're on good money, you've got a nice car, it's prestigious. But my heart was saying, you need to fucking get out, you need to get out. So I left, I went living in Thailand with my wife, carried on our yoga studies. And then the last 15 years really has just been an intense journey of self-discovery, an inner journey that's involved yoga, meditation, stillness, darkness, mountains, hallucinogenics, tantra, mindfulness, shadow work. You know, I've tried everything really to know myself on a deeper level. But professionally, it's also been an interesting time for me as well, because over the last 15 years, I've worked a lot for World Rugby. So I've travelled the whole world working with different teams, which has been rewarding. Developing nations. I've been to 4 World Cups now. But I've also became a life coach. I became an NLP practitioner. I became a leadership coach. I got into men's work. I became a shadow work practitioner. All sorts of different courses, emotional wellness courses, you know, short therapy courses, and here I am today, really. So now rugby is still in my life, but it's certainly not a priority. My priority in life now is helping men to evolve to the next stage of life. It's been an intense journey for me, actually. It's been an intense 15 years. I've kind of gone down the traditional self-development route because I've not had kids, which, as you know, brings its own way of evolution, its own challenges. I've just dived into everything, really. You know, all the self-help books tell you to do, I've done. There's been times when I've been split. Like, I remember even 6 or 7 years ago, there was kind of 2 parts within me. There was this hippie, the spiritual hippie, and I had a brand called Men Without Masks. I ran retreats for men, but that was a kind of spiritual hippie part of me. And there was this high performance guy, this leader, this more logical performance related guy, and there was a split in me for a while. So when I was in this camp, I wouldn't talk about that camp, and sometimes when I was in that camp, I didn't talk about that camp. And thankfully, that doesn't exist in me anymore, because I'm just a lot more integrated. Sometimes it doesn't even matter to me what my title is. I just help blokes, no matter whether we need a title for people to identify with, but I got rid of that brand, Men Without Masks, a couple of years ago, and I just run everything under Craig White Mentoring, and it's under the brand of leadership, because the men that I attract, they want to lead. They want to be better dads. They want to be better husbands. They want to be more mindful bosses. They want to be a better son to the mum who's probably not got long left. They want to be more present in the world, but they don't want to go down the route of saying, I've got a mental health problem. I'm an addict. I'm violent. I've been abusive. I don't talk to my wife. I feel suicidal. I feel depressed. I'm anxious. They don't. So I don't go down that route anymore. That's for therapists, and that's for trauma practitioners. I work under leadership.
You, whether I've read this or heard this, but you referred to it, and I think you mentioned or replied back to me in the comment, men awakening up. There's an awakening.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that. What do you mean?
Well, I remember that because I remember seeing a post, or a number of different posts on one of my feeds, and it was, men are suffering, they're in crisis, there's a big problem on our hands. And my response is, I get what you're saying, but it's also a celebration, because it's been in the closet for so long. Men have buttoned up for so long, and now it's coming out because they've no choice. They're being put under pressure by women and girlfriends and relatives and things on social media, and the heart speaking to them, the body speaking to them. And for me, it's a celebration. Men are finally waking up. And there's no route to freedom in a blissful state. You've got to go through pain. It's as simple as that. You have to go through pain to come out the other side. So men are struggling, and men are in pain, and men are anxious and panicking and not knowing what to do. But it's also a sign that men are waking up. And now we've got to provide avenues for them to go down, whether that's through therapy or friendship or coaching or retreats or the NHS or men's groups or nature.
It's interesting that, because you're from Wigan, I'm from working in West Cumbria, and I would always think as a child looking at it would be termed as, it's a midlife crisis. Wheels have fallen off, they've done this, had an affair, midlife crisis. Whereas actually now, through your work, through your perspective, through others' perspective as well, it's not necessarily a cry out for help, but it's different now. It's maybe fellas are opening their hand up and saying, I'm going to take ownership of this, I'm going to take accountability. And you're right, whatever route that might be, whether it's therapy, whether it's life changes, challenging addictions, whatever that might be, there seems to be a little bit more accountability, or people take ownership for that.
Yeah. Well, I talk about it. I mean, it doesn't, it's still in my work, it still does happen in midlife with the clients that I attract, for example. It still happens like mid-40s, 50, but it can also happen much earlier these days as well. You know, it does happen much earlier as well. But for me, when that crisis kicks in, whether it's the loss of a dad or a breakup of a relationship or loss of a job, loss of a shitload of money or a health scare, whatever it is, it's a painful experience that's bringing to surface the need to change. And for me, it is initially perceived as a crisis, but there's two doors that we could go down. There's the black door, which is ignore it, continue to distract, pretend nothing's happened, drugs, addictions, depression, unfortunately suicide is the end road in that. Or it's through the white door. Wow, I'm in a bit of pain, but this is an opportunity to change. Let's go for it. Who can I be? All that shit I picked up in life, it's not mine. How can I let go of it and move into a new version of me? Where do I go? Books, podcasts, videos, YouTube, therapist, coach, so on and so on and so on. That's the white door. That's the white door of self-discovery, which is rewriting the script. Because what we download and what we identify with and what we believe about ourselves, it's only a script. And a lot of that script we didn't choose ourselves, it was given to us. So that, you know, that time comes in life where there's a knock on the door from life. It's like, are you who you really think you are? You've believed that for so long? Is it true? And then we get a chance to rewrite our book.
I mean, that's trauma as well, right, isn't it? I suppose,
of course, yeah.
And we don't talk about, dare I say, maybe the positives of trauma, that we do have two opportunities to either tackle that stuff that maybe the trauma or the stuff that we've buried for weeks, months, years, or do we just go down that other door of denying it all? In your experience of your work, professionally, you know, rugby and leadership and mentoring, what are the blockers for men in terms of choosing the white door instead of the black door?
Fear of rejection, fear of isolation, fear of humiliation, which is probably related to some kind of trauma from childhood, and they think it's going to come up again. If I admit to my struggles, he's going to leave me, she's going to leave me, they're going to think I'm pathetic, they're going to humiliate me. Because that probably happened when they were kids. You know, they expressed.
And they've experienced that.
They expressed something and they were shut down. Or they acted in a certain way and they were rejected. And the deeply ingrained beliefs that we still carry in our DNA from our ancestors around what it means to be a man. You know, you don't complain, you crack on, you don't speak up, you don't say you're struggling, you just keep cracking on and protecting and providing. It's not about you, it's about your kids. So that is initially why some men are still not cracking open.
Yeah. Which age groups are really still battling that?
It depends really, because I mean, arguably it's not about age. It could be the phase at which we are still stuck at. What I mean by that is, we could say there's a phase when we come into the world of about 6 or 7 years where all we want is to be loved and to be held and to be close to mum and to be nurtured and to be fed and in shelter, and for our nervous system to feel safe. And then we could say the next stage is where we get a little bit older, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You know, we're seeking a little bit of independence, a little bit of separation from mother and father, you know, out into the world, you know, walking upright, friends, early schoolhood years. You know, who can I be when I'm older, daddy? Who can I be when I'm older, mummy? Thinking about the future. And then we get into our teens and there's an explosion of hormones and confusion and maybe a little bit of anger, and might be the time when we need our father. It might be a time when we need strong men around us just to say, hey lad, I experienced that as well. It's all right. You're not going crazy. You can shout at me. I'm not going to have a go at you. I know you're angry and pissed off. I love you as you are.
I'm here.
I'm here for you. So that support that's needed in those teenage years, and then we get into our 20s and we're out into the world trying to kind of find out what works for us and how we're going to make some money and how we're going to kind of survive and thrive in the world. And then we might get married and we might kind of feel the pressure of providing and protecting. We go into our warrior phase and we become a warrior. It's like building, slaying, hard work, drive. And then we come to the end of that phase and we realise that it doesn't bring us happiness, and then we become a seeker. We start seeking things different, reading books, reading podcasts, getting into spirituality but not telling anybody about it, thinking about the bigger picture, asking deep questions. Who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? Why am I here? And contemplating that. And we seek in different ways, but a lot of us do end up seeking something outside of who we think we are. And in my case, that also ends, and then there's an integration period, and it becomes about purpose, and it becomes about joy, and it becomes about reconnection with nature for me, and reconnecting with the simplicity of life. And then hopefully I'll get into my 60s and I'll slow down, and then I'll become an elder, and it's about nurturing and mentoring others. But I mean, I've gone off on a bit of tangent there, but what I'm trying to say is it might not be age that's the fact, the problem here. If our needs were not met in the first 7 years of life, we could struggle at any point. We could struggle in our teens and get put into prison. We could struggle when we're in our 20s and go through 3 marriages. We could struggle at any time.
What impact does the likes of me? I mean, you don't have a telly here. You make that choice as a young lad growing up. What impact does that noise of social media, of perfectionism, what impact does that have on adults and young people and young lads trying to find themselves?
Well, it creates a narrative, doesn't it? It creates an identity, unfortunately. Even when I was a kid, I didn't have social media, but we watched a shitload of telly in our house with my mum and dad every single night, and we either watched warrior movies, army movies, or sport. So that was a man for me. It was a fucking tough guy. It was this tough warrior. That was a man, So I downloaded that from even not really through talking to mum and dad about it. It was just obvious for me growing up that my mum used to love buff guys on TV that were tough, and so did my dad. But the confusing came for me because my dad wasn't like that. My dad was gentle, and so inside there was confusion going on, thinking, what's going on here? So I ended up thinking my dad was a weak man, just because I was so attached to my mum and how she saw the world. I was so attached to my mum, so I used to think my dad was weak, unfortunately, because he wasn't. I don't think the world is bad, and I don't think the world is incredible. I just think until we wake up, and you're talking about young men now, until they wake up later in life, which is probably through a painful experience, they're just a product of what they download.
Yeah.
They're a product of what they see, they're a product of what they hear, they're a product of what they talk about, they're a product of who they connect with, they're a product of what the narrative is of the mother and father and where they grow up, social media. So it's really, really important for parents and teachers and people that care for young boys and young girls to have an awareness of whatever comes through the senses becomes their reality.
You mentioned something really profound when I heard it. I think it was on the podcast, the good, the bad, the rugby. You said men are grieving, maybe for the fathers that they never had.
It's like I see it in even the clients that I work with now. I don't tend to attract guys with extreme childhood trauma, but they're still fucking traumatized, and a lot of them had a father that wasn't around. A lot of my clients had a father that wasn't divorced to the mother, but he's just fucking working all the time. I've had guys in this room here doing sessions with them, and it seems normal in their language when they say things like, "Oh yeah, Dad was away for you when I was 4. Oh yeah, he was in another country," or "Oh, Dad worked on nights 4 days a week," or "Oh, we didn't actually see Dad that much, but when he came home Saturday and Sunday, we had a great time." And it's and those same clients, they can't switch off. The workaholics, they don't know how to feel. They don't know what's right. They don't know what's wrong. They avoid commitment in intimate relationships because that's what the dad modelled. The dad modelled to them protection and provision, but he didn't model to them navigating a loving relationship, touch, working through stuff with mum, repairing with mum, careful conversations,
So sensey stuff, not in tune with the
Yeah.
sensey stuff, feeling,
emotional
seeing, hearing.
emotional intelligence. Yeah, even in some of the early work that I read about men's work from people like Robert Moore and Robert Bly, it's evident in that archetypal work that if Dad wasn't around much, or if Dad wasn't emotionally available, or if Dad didn't teach us anything, or more importantly, if Dad didn't bless us with his presence, and Dad didn't model to us healthy masculinity, there'll come a time in a man's life when he struggles and he can't get his shit together. He just can't get his shit together. He gets things wrong, he can't commit, he fucks things up, he can't get up in the morning, he's a workaholic, and life just feels uninspiring. And in the archetypal work that I used to do, he can't find his king. He's either a lost boy that's chasing love, or he's a inflated warrior that never stops. His king doesn't come online. So masculine blessing is really important in those early years. It can be a big brother, it can be a dad, it can be your uncle, it can be a PE teacher, it can be a granddad, but it's needed for your nervous system.
Well, it's interesting. I read quite recently of Boys and Men by Richard Reeves. I mean, I need to be better at reading. Prior to 36, I probably read about 3 or 4 Where's Wally books, but I'm getting into it now. Interesting, talking about equality, when we talk about the natural rise of female gender equality, rightly so, but just leaving men and boys and men coming in and thinking, what is my role? And I know I shared with you, I lost a dear friend just over 3 years ago to suicide, a beautiful soul, but we know from people that have come close to suicide, one of the big things, the belief is they are better off without me. Now, there's some real links between that and what you've just been saying about finding their king, because that finding their king is around what's my why, what's my purpose, why am I put
What's
here?
my why, what's my talents, what am I good at, what comes natural,
What's my difference?
what brings me joy.
Why aren't people seeing that? And you said something again at the end of a podcast, why aren't we teaching emotional intelligence to kids? Why aren't we promoting our core sense, which is emotion? Talk about anger, talk about pain, Inside Out, beautiful film, all about the limbic system.
Yeah, I agree. I sometimes reference that.
Oh, well, I did a talk in a school yesterday, and I link a lot of it. I use gladiators as a metaphor for resilience, like, Jewel, you get knocked off, you've got to get back up, but those emotions are key because that's what we feel. And
all of them. Imagine if we taught in school that every emotion was a superhero, and it had a superpower, and it had a way of being expressed, and it had a way that it wanted to be felt, and what happened when it wasn't, what happened to it when you felt it and it moved through your body. Imagine that, because we grow up thinking that these emotions are all right and these are not.
But also, there's some real links between that. It's a real bugbear of mine. When you're in school, one question that you're asked is, what do you want to be when you're older? Always that projection of the future, but where are you now? What are you brilliant at? What fucking lights you up?
Yeah.
Makes you different to the average Joe sitting next to you.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that. And it's a wonder why kids are just sitting quietly in the ground. And I link that to West Cumbria, big issues in my town. I was back at my old high school a couple of weeks ago and they do a wellbeing week. Suicide attempts in northern towns are through the roof in terms of kids from 11 to 16. And there's some real links with that.
Yeah.
And and I suppose my question is, what's going on with us in terms of society as to why are we not leaning into that?
Yeah.
Is it the system? What is it? Why are we not leaning into it? It's very clear, it's very logical. We have to go back and start and nurture kids from the inside out. pardon the pun of the film there, but why are we not doing it?
You only have to look at the population in prisons to see the disaster, the destruction that happens to men when they've not got dad around. There's a high, you'll know this, there's a high percentage of male and female prisoners that didn't have a father, or father wasn't around, or father was abusive, or father was in and out, or father was an alcoholic, or father was a drug addict. It's just a massive correlation with people in prison and the lack of a authentic father figure. It's huge.
I don't know what the current stat is. I heard it on the pod the other day, but it's close to around 90% of young offenders are male at the moment.
Yeah.
Who are in a youth offender institute or a secure unit.
Yeah.
Which to me, there's links as well between, if you think of suicide rates, between 40 and 50 UK is probably the largest population. Now those 40s and 50-year-olds were probably fathers of kids between 10 and 20 growing up. So again, the modelling, the messaging that's sent to people. And I don't know what the answer is, but I also look at the work that you're doing, the work that we are trying to do in schools. And, you know, it's interesting you said superheroes. I refer to sports coaches. You are their superheroes. You're not a coach. They will see you in a light that they'll never see you as a father. Officer. Yeah, you're a father. And you are what they aspire to be.
100%.
And they see everything, see the behaviour. Look at some of my coaches, God, they were absolute incredible people, but love the drink, love that. But actually in those moments, I see them come back from work, steel workers, they had a shower before they went training.
Yeah.
Then they had a shower afterwards, and you're looking back and thinking, this is the good stuff, because these are the opportunities that we have with kids. Yeah. There's people out there that might not have male role models, but they've got a rugby coach. They've got someone who's a youth worker or whatever that might be. You also said on something you found your feminine self. Tell me a little bit about that and what you meant by that.
So when we grow up, you know, in order to develop a healthy sense of ego, what ends up happening is we end up with a persona and we end up with a shadow. You know, the persona is a strategic way of behaving that we perceived growing up led to acceptance, belonging, safety and love. So we do more of it and we do more of it. You know, an example would be if I please mum, she smiles at me and I feel joy. So I'll please her even more and I'll keep pleasing her. But if I disagree with mum, I get a slap across the fucking head or I get a slap across the wrist. So I'm going to stop doing that. So we end up with a persona in a shadow. And like I said, my persona was, in energetic terms, polarity terms, hyper-masculine, dominant, sporty. I thought in linearity, which is the masculine, you know, future, goals, well, task, training, challenge, training, challenge. So it was a life of the masculine, because what I repressed was the opposite of that. And the opposite of that is spontaneity, fluidity, adaptability, softness, gentleness, flow, what were deemed to be more feminine qualities. For me, that was what women did. Women did that, you know. Men lifted weights, women danced. Men didn't speak a lot, women spoke an awful lot. So it's only when I got into yoga and it went deep into my unconscious that I realised that I suppressed all that kind of stuff because I was fearful of it. Even growing up in relationships, I was fearful of women because I was fearful of my mum. I was shit scared of my mum. Shit scared of women. What do men do when they're shit scared of women? They dominate them. Or they shame them. Or they belittle them, like my dad did to my mum watching telly every night. Or they become righteous. They always get one over them at the end, prove them wrong. So we do all those nasty things to women because we're scared of the feminine. That's the root of violence from men against women. They're scared of their own feminine. We're scared of the feminine on the outside. And ultimately, the feminine is the planet Earth. No, the masculine is kind of the void, if you like, the spaciousness aspect of reality. You know, some people might call it, in yogic terms, people call that Shiva. And Shakti is the expression, the manifestation of consciousness. You know, colours, nature, music, sound. So if men are still suppressing the feminine side, they'll always damage the earth. So it is a big piece of work. And of course, men need to be men, and I get that. But what I found on my journey, and this is a really important message for other men, is when I've eventually reclaimed those feminine qualities in me, and I've learned to move and think and feel in more non-linear, flowing, feminine ways, I don't lose my masculine. Like that masculine core of getting shit done, goal setting, providing, protecting, being strong, bringing on my command when I need to bring it on. I've never lost that. But it's integrated now within the more feminine part of me. And men don't realise that. They think, oh, if I do all those feminine things, I'm not a man anymore. I'll become emasculated. It's not true. You become more rounded and integrated and more full, and you develop more range in life.
And what are the consequences? What do you get back in return for that?
That's a brilliant question. What do I get back in return for the work I've done to reintegrate my suppressed parts? Presence. I sleep well every night. I don't give a fuck what people think about me. I'm less identified with the character in the movie, less triggered in relationships. The biggest one is I take things less personally because I've not got this constructed image of what I want the world to see me as. When we have this constructed image of what I want the world to see me as, if we delve into any other character traits that aren't that, it scares the life out of us. We get triggered, we deny it, we get angry, we get shameful. Probably moving away from what we just spoke about in terms of masculine and feminine, probably the biggest shift for me, which makes life easier to manage and makes challenge easier to navigate and makes triggers hang around for less time, is that I've had so many out-of-body experiences, altered experiences, spiritual experiences, awakenings, whatever you want to call it, whether that's with meditation or spending time in darkness or spending time in nature on my own, doing lots of deep yoga practice. I've had so many experiences of reality, not as form, but reality as a spaciousness, reality as an energy, reality as oneness, that those peak experiences, they change me. They change things. And of course I'm a bloke, I've got a body, I've got a body and I've got a mind and I've got beliefs, but I don't identify 100% with me as a human being. I also identify, it's difficult to give it names. I have a huge identification with I as consciousness. And because of that, I suffer less. So whether it comes through your kids or whether it comes through nature or whether it comes through going to church or whether it comes through meditating or whether it comes through having a near-death experience or whether it comes through having a kid, whatever it is, men do need to be taught that the spiritual journey is important. They do need to have an experience, because I can't read it in a book, that the experience of life is more than being in this body with all these traumas and emotions. They need to know that there's more to life than that. Otherwise, the identification with the body is what causes real suffering.
I've heard you mention before as well, you have loads of people that get in touch and then it tails off. So obviously you're a long way down that journey. What advice would you give people that are they're getting in touch, and I'm gonna ask you about, you know, where people can get in touch to be in a position where they're with you and go on this journey with you. What advice would you give people that are fighting those? They get in touch and then think, oh, I'll sack it off, I won't follow through.
I would just say to them, keep seeking, because I might not be the right person for them. I might not be. They might need a different character or a different energy where they feel a little bit safer with. I would just tell them to keep seeking, keep seeking for support. The other thing that we didn't mention, and I always mention it because it's so fucking important, but too simple to be true, is men need to reconnect with nature. They need to get out into nature and get dirty and get muddy and climb fucking trees and build huts and swim in rivers and light fires.
I did a programme with a load of fellas not so long back, and we just just set them a task of the first one to make a brew, quick as you can, find all the gear, bit of cotton wool, bit of Vaseline, made it easy for them, easier. And you just see them connect with their younger selves, get competitive, get giddy, challenge, as in how do we do that, strip everything back, technology, and you're right, they're just laid up, but the world isn't built for that now, is it? It's to get indoors, get behind technology, and to keep pushing harder and working harder.
It's the same with teenagers. If you put, even teenagers that have never been into nature, if you get a group of teenagers into nature for a week, and you put, there's a river there, there's a fire there, there's some stones there, there's some lighters there, they can light a fire, there's sticks, they'll occupy themselves. They'll be bored as fuck and kick up a fuss for the first day, but then the natural instinct kicks in, and the natural innate intelligence that's connected to nature will kick in, and they'll end up making games up and having fun and going for a swim and competing with each other and building things. There's this natural innate intelligence inside of us that knows what to do in nature, but as you quite rightly say, as a society, we're just far removed from that. And in my life, the older I get, the closer I get to nature. If we reconnected to nature, if we taught about emotions in school, if we taught about relationship intelligence in school, if men were taught the importance of consent in school and respecting a woman's body and respecting their own body, and it'd be a different world. But in the same breath, I also think that in the evolution of human beings on this planet, we're also going through a phase. You know, there's a recalibration happening at the moment. Men are struggling, but I think they're struggling in order to go to the next stage of evolution. And the other thing to say about trauma, for example, if you look through the history of humanity, a lot of the movers and shakers in history that really had an impact on humanity, they were traumatized. But it gave them a sense of purpose, and it gave them a drive to change something. If you look at a lot of the top athletes on the planet, traumatized.
I wonder if there's some links there with neurodiversity as well. People that are high achievers in life, high proportion sit within that neurodiversity because they've probably had to come through that adverse, and they've had to be resilient to find a way through. Then they're awake, they know what the purpose is. We're going to wrap up soon. I'm going to ask you this because I get asked this a lot, and I think from your strength and conditioning background, young people and body image.
Oh man.
Particularly, I know I probably haven't got time to go into it, but it's a big thing. Parents in particular, I do a lot of work at my local rugby club around wellbeing stuff, and I get asked it a lot. They're getting obsessed with body image, or wanting to get bigger, and they're drifting down that path. What advice would you give parents or young people that were struggling with that?
There always seems to be some kind of wound in every person, especially early on in those childhood years, that there's an innate belief that I'm not good enough unless. So we live in a society now, don't we? And the advertising companies know this. They know that inside all of human beings there's a little wound, and if we prod it, they'll buy our product. I'm not good enough unless I have a six-pack. I'm not good enough unless I have a PlayStation. I'm not good enough unless I have 12 GCSEs. There's this pattern inside of all us that society taps into. So we've all got deep ingrained beliefs that I'm not good enough unless. So I think the body image is around that. I'm not good enough unless I'm under 70 kgs, I'm not good enough unless I go to the gym, I'm not good enough unless I'm a brilliant dancer. It's not only related to body image, it's related to how we're manipulated by society.
And identity, and our sense of it. And what are we searching for?
And when we live with all of our attention here, when we think the world exists exclusively here, we're always at risk of that. It's only when we have some kind of painful awakening and we come inwards and we come inwards and we learn to be still and we learn to be still and we learn to shift our attention away from what we think is real, and we shift it and we can practice, whether that's through meditation, breathing, yoga, martial arts, meditation, dance, whatever it is. It's only when we shift more of our attention inwards over and over and over and over and over and over and over again that we realise that the story that lives here is not who we are.
But that's ultimate presence, isn't it? Being present in that moment with me, not that external.
And you know, there's a lot written about self-love, and I do think it's a journey of self-love. I really, really do. But self-love is not going for a sauna and a massage and drinking green tea and going to bed early. You know, self-love is that inward journey into, firstly, understanding that we're all a series of fragmented parts, and secondly, learning to love every single part of ourselves. Even the one that's got body dysmorphia, learning to love that little boy inside. That's the journey, really. But it's a journey, isn't it? It's not easy.
Well, yeah, and
it's not easy.
It isn't. But I think it's just that I did a talk the other week, and I stood up in front of a lot of fellas at the Story House Theatre in Chester, and I firmly believe this. I said I think it's a good time to be a boy and a man. But I think this conversation has just been a real privilege to get into your mind, and I have thoroughly enjoyed every second of this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. I know that this is going to have an impact, a profound impact on people watching and listening. To go to that next level, where can people get in touch with you and take it to the next level if they want to?
My website is craigwhitementoring.com. I think I'm Craig White Mentoring on Instagram. You can find Craig White on LinkedIn. And you can find my podcast, Dare to Be Different podcast, on YouTube, Spotify and iTunes and all that.
Which is class.
Thank you.
Love the episode with Cruz Lehman recently.
Yeah.
So the final thing that I get all of our guests to, and I think you've probably covered it, but what would your little blackbird worm of wisdom be?
My worm of wisdom relates to a conversation that I had this morning with a fella in the gym. And it reflects why a lot of people struggle in life. So I'm in the gym and I know this guy, and I said, "How's it going, mate?" He said, "Oh, fucking Monday, fucking hell." I said, "I don't agree with you." I said, "It's a choice, isn't it?" He said, "Is it?" I said, "Yeah, you've got a choice. You've labelled Mondays as being really fucking miserable and down and energyless. It's a choice." And he's probably held that belief for 64 years. His mum probably said it, his dad probably said it, his grand said it, she probably said it. It goes back in the DNA, in the ancestral cycle. He's just downloaded it. And he had some manifestations of stress as well. Diabetes, high blood pressure, stress levels really going through the roof, anxiety. It's no wonder, because his worldview, or his Monday view, which probably isn't only on Mondays, is that the world's tough and the world's a drag and the world's fucking hard. You know, it is a victim. So my words of wisdom are, be really, really careful what you say to yourself, because it has massive, massive implications into the way you feel and how you move through life.
I like that. Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, you too, mate.
And thanks for being so open and honest.
Thank you.
Smashed it. Thanks for listening, or thanks for watching the podcast. Please take a couple of seconds to engage with us. Please subscribe, like, or give us a comment on how you're finding the podcast so far. And keep listening. Take care. All the best. keep smiling.